I think we are live again. So, good morning for me, good afternoon for someone around the world, and good evening for my guest today. It is my pleasure to be joined by Jeremy Szal,
Mm-hmm.
sci-fi. What did you call cyberpunk author?
Space punk, but yeah, fantasy as well. I do it
Um,
all. I
you
contain
know.
multitudes.
So we were talking just before going live. You just recovering from a accidental wound that has made it into one of your books. Uh,
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you
I have for those of you who can't see the camera or don't benefit from the live feed, I had a nail gun wound about 2 years ago. I shot a nail gun nail through my hand, which was, probably not the best of ideas, or it wasn't quite done intentionally. And so that is made, as you may imagine, it has made writing difficult. And I have recently had surgery in which I've had a bone removed. More specifically, I've had the pisiform bone, which is in the wrist, right one of the right side to the wrist, removed for various reasons. And so yeah, I am now only have 205 bones in my body, and I am not being at the computer is hard and very painful, and I am trying to minimize my time spent on it. That I do not have to be, but although I am, so that has made writing somewhat difficult. And so, but yeah, it had to happen, and I'm trying to come out the other end of it. But fortunately, I can still talk. Hence why
yeah.
I'm here.
So, quick question: how do you work around that? Then, how did you carry on writing when literally one of your hands is firmly strapped in there and presumably still in pain?
Well, right. I mean, I haven't been strapped in this for 2.5 years.
Right.
It was only a few days.
But have you used like speech to text, any of those tools, or are you still trying to go about it the
I
traditional
can
way?
speech to text for an email. That's it. I can't do anything longer than that. I just makes me want to drill a hole into my brain. It makes me want to shoot another nail gun. This time in my head. I can't do it. My brain and my mouth are running at different speeds, and it doesn't make for good a good narrative. I wouldn't think. In email, it's fine because it's just delivering simple information. But yeah, prose, I am very much a hands-on, in the very literal sense, hands-on keyboard, writing my thoughts that way. Yeah, dictation is not going to work for me.
Right. Interesting. And again, we were sort of briefly touching on about my pet hate for particularly threads. I don't know if threads counts as social media, but I don't know
Yeah.
for anyone that listened to the last conversation with JD Barker. If X is the place where conversation goes to die, I think threads is where indie authors go to moan. I think that's pretty much how we describe it. And we were talking about how there seems to be a fair amount of indie authors just moaning and complaining on threads about not being supported, or the books not being read, or people not giving them a fair shot. And I've got not a lot of sympathy for those. I think some indie authors do understand the grind. They do understand what needs to go behind it. And you yourself have had some experience with that. So I just wanted to hear your take on it.
Yeah. So basically, my journey being published, or my take on my opinion on that subject.
Let's talk about your journey to being
Sure.
published. What was the grind behind it?
Right, and there was very much a grind. And so yeah, I started. I think I wrote in high school when I was finishing high school. I started writing a novel because I just read the brilliant Song of Ice and Fire series, and thinking, man, I can't wait for the new book to come out in just a few short years. And in the meantime, I'll write my own novel. And I was also reading the Star Wars novels and getting into science fiction probably for the first time, and I discovered Joe Abercrombie and people like that. And so I just started typing away at my own novel. It was absolutely awful. I got rejected by every single agent in the business, as I deserved to. And then I thought, okay, well, novels are pretty long and complex to write. Maybe I'll just take a shot at writing short stories. And so I started doing that. And slowly but surely, some of them did get accepted. And when it did, like, I remember there's one time when my first short story did get published. Like, I remember I was literally jumping around the room with excitement. I think I was like, I was 18 at the time or something like that. Give me a break. And so that's what happened. And I was, like, okay, I've actually cracked the code. I've actually managed to publish and write something. I've managed to write something that is publishable. I think I sold my first professional short story to Nature magazine when I was 19. And so then I was like, yeah, okay, this is pretty good. And so I started selling quite a few short stories, getting them reprinted, getting them adapted into audio with a few podcasts. And by then I was also working as an editor for a podcast. And so I was able to gain insight. I was reading thousands and thousands of stories in the sent to me in a slush file. And so I was able to slowly, thousands over the years, that is, not all the time. I was able to see, okay, what actually makes a good story, what I'm looking for, and I was able to compartmentalize everything that was part of a damn good story. And I was able to see, okay, this is an opening, this is a good opening, this is a bad opening. Okay, this is a great ending, this is a lackluster ending. I was able to really find, concrete evidence and concrete examples, and I was able to hone my craft that way. And really see, okay, this is what I need to do in order to be better. And so I took that to approach with my own writing. I'm like, okay, I've never before then, I didn't really thought about writing as a craft. I just thought, well, okay, I'm just going to sit down, write my thing, tell the story. And that was it. But now I actually thought, okay, how do I make it better? How do I take it to the next level? How do I really push myself to get to that stage? And so I wrote I wrote a novel about I think it was a murder mystery in space in 2016. Wrote in 6 months. I challenged myself to write 1,000 words every day, something like minimum. It got me an agent, but it didn't sell. But one of the editors who read it really, really liked it. And so when I wrote Stormblood, my debut novel, she said, okay, I want to have a quiet look at it. So she had a look. We submitted the book, and about 4 months later, she got back to us and said, look, we're going to reject this because we thought that the opening was a bit weak and had all these problems with it. In saying that, we feel like there's potential here. And so if you'd be willing to go back and take another look at it, we'd be willing to look at it again. I can't make any promises, of course, but would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to make some of these suggested changes based on the edit notes? And at the time I was like, okay, is the Pope a Catholic? Of course I'm going to do it. Of course I'm going to take a look at these edits. I have never written before or since worked so carefully and with such precision. It was surgical, man. Every word was surgical. It took me 3 weeks just to rewrite the first chapter, let alone do all the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, this editor was Gillian Redfern, so she's at the deputy publisher of Gallant, so she publishes Joe Abercrombie, Richard Morgan, Brandon Sanderson, Rothfuss, Alistair Reynolds, Chris Wooding, Chris Rocuccio before he moved to another UK publisher. People like that. And so I was like, okay, I really, really got to knuckle down and do this right. And so it took a little, then I sent it back to her. It took her a little while to get back to us because she was off, marrying Joe Hill or something like that. Woman needs to get a priority straight, clearly. What the hell is she doing that for when she's got a book by me waiting to be read? Come on, if you listen to this, Gillian, come on, what were you doing? And so that happened, and there was a very tense few months. And then one Thursday morning, I woke up with a letter, and she was saying, "Okay, we like this. I've been allowed to make an offer. Let's do it." And that was the first book in the Common trilogy. And about a little over 2 years later, the first book, Stormblood, came out. So, yeah, that's my journey, as it were.
But so, from you finishing the first draft of the novel until, like you said, you surgically and carefully made all the suggested changes, or most of them. How long did that period take? More or less.
More or less, I think, basically when I started finishing the novel, or when I submitted it.
Between finishing the novel and then being accepted.
I think 2000. I finished it in 2000 and May 2017, I believe. But I had a novel on submission.
Mm-hmm.
And it took my agent it took me a few months to get back to me with edits for the book, and it took me a few months to go through those edits. And so it didn't go on submission till 2018. Yeah, so the timeline's a little bit wonky because I had another book out and like that.
So possibly there's a good extra year of working hard on edits and rewriting and stuff like that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. And like there was a year where I had to do those edits that she gave me. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it took. How long did it take? I went on holiday at the time, so it's a bit tricky. But I do remember, sitting in the hotel when I could, and just really refining going over the book and going over the first 100 pages. It was only the first 100 pages that she really edited, but she gave a pretty strong edit note for the first two chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Those two chapters were where the vast majority of the edits were required. And so, yeah, there was quite a bit of work. At least I would say 6 weeks, and actually more than that, probably 2 months easily of working on edits.
Yeah, because this is the message that I hope any indie author that has finished a book sort of takes away. It's not just finishing writing your book, and it's not the fact that you submit it to some editor who is going to do an orthotypographical edit. That's not an edit. An edit is someone who is going to literally go through the whole book in the best case scenario and talk to you about internal consistency of the plot, of the characters, of what is needed, was not essential, and really put work on it. For anyone that didn't look at it, the episode with Christopher Rocchio and David Bartlett, when we were talking about the penultimate book in the Sun Eater series, they took out 60,000 words of that book. They basically took a novel out of that book. That's an editor's job.
Yeah, I can do better than that. For book 3, because for various reasons, I delivered a book that was 400,000 words.
Ooh.
Gillian helped me cut it in half.
Really?
That Chris, and Chris knows this, and no joke, because I had the same editor as him. I said to my editor Gillian, I said to her, I was kind of hoping that I would kind of get away with what Chris does, writing these really long, epic books, because I'm a fan of the Sun Eater books, but they are long.
Yeah.
And that's part of what is good, because they're rich and have so much depth and scope in a very long-winded, elegant way. And I said to her, I was kind of hoping to do the same thing in a few ways. And I was hoping I would, I knew I'd get some cut, but I was hoping to get, 250K, 260, 270. I was hoping I'd get away with it. And she said to me, Jeremy, if I was Chris's main editor on that series, he wouldn't be able to get away with it either. Because he was published Door first and then Galance. Yeah, I've told Chris that since, which he's found pretty funny.
Yeah.
But that really, an editor though is their job to go through that, and and I have experience on both sides of the table on that. And for what my editor Gillian has done, like for the first couple of chapters, what they do is they don't, as you say, they don't just replace a few commas through autocorrect, maybe fix a few inconsistencies. No, what they do is they get to the heart of the story. They look at what you're trying to do, and they say, okay, how can we distill this? How we can take what you're doing and refine that to make it do what you're doing in the most extreme way possible, right? How can we take this good action scene and how can we really make it sharp and polished and hit? How can we take this, character introduction and really make it rich and meaningful and have every paragraph really sing and count? And so that's what Gillian did for me. My editor did for me. She really helped me refine, especially in the first 2 chapters. Like the first chapter is almost unrecognizable. I think I added like 15 pages to the first chapter because the first chapter originally began with the main character running away from some people very bad people that he's just stolen from. And he's about to get carved up from them in the back alleys of this asteroid station. But she said, okay, would it be possible if we could see the heist actually happening? And so what I did was I started off with him walking to the destination, and you get his thoughts and details about the world, and feeding these details in, because he's got this alien drug in him, and we can talk about the premise of the books a little bit later. But that's essentially what it was, weaving those fine details in, giving us the voice, allowing us to sink in. So we're not just thrust right into the middle of the action. We have time to see and care and get to know this person as if we're strolling along with him, right? And so I couldn't, in hindsight, it was blatantly obvious. Something I should have done. But with books, and this is my firm belief, you are so close to the manuscript, the work, you cannot see the tree from the forest. That is why a lot of writers will say, set your work aside and go back to it. And that's good, and you should do that. But you should also have someone else look at it. And I know this because I was an editor, and I edited stories. I had stories sent to me that I said, okay, and I wasn't getting paid for this, mind. I said, that, okay, this story, it's good, but it's not there yet. Could you go back and edit it? I'll edit it with you. And then could we maybe see what happens with it? Could we actually make this work? And there were, I did that about a dozen times where I actually sent a rejection, but I later edited with them. And, one of the guys that I did, he later got option for film, and that's nothing to do with me, but that's everything to do with him. But it was because of that conversation, that relationship. And I think that every work, no matter who the author is, needs that.
And I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it's ego or if it's pride in your work or whatever you want to call it. I'm sure you can express it better than me. You have to be able, in your case, to take that advice and, you go back, say, we're going to cut your book in half. Like, you've spent however many months, years, hours of work, and for someone to say to you, Jeremy, half of it, mate, and you have to discard, half of it, and you're going to be able to accept it and go, yes, that's for the best. I've not wasted my time, but it must be a hard truth to take on.
No, it was. Look, I did know that it would have to be cut. I knew that it would have to be orbiting the 200K mark, and it would have to be 220, 240 I would maybe get. And I was prepared for that, and I wrote some of the scenes I wrote were extraneous. But I needed to do that because I was going through other issues at the time, and I came off a really bad copy editor, let's just say. And I had other issues, and it was post-COVID, and everything just compressed and compounded, and it was not a good time for me. So I just, in doing so, and just doing that word vomit, it eased the congestion out of my brain. My editor, and I would have cut some of that back, but my editor said to me, look, just send it to me when it's done, and then we'll take a look at it. And that's what I did. And that's fine. But I mean, if I'd written a 200,000 word book or 150,000 word book, and if I wrote a 150K book and someone said, oh, we'll just cut this in half, which would be insane because it wouldn't be a book then. It would be a young adult book. I would say absolutely not. Forget it. And as I said, I worked with bad editors before. Both, when I had my work, I've pulled stories from magazines because I've worked with the editor. I'm like, absolutely not. Your vision, we are way off course. You want to go that way, I want to go this way, and you seem to have forgotten that it's my name on the cover. It's my story. And I've worked with copy editors as well who I will never work with again because they had I wasn't sure if they were aware who was the writer and who was the freelancer. And so, but those people aren't really a concern. But those people are very few and far in between, fortunately. The vast majority of editors I've worked with have been amazing. Gillian Redfern has been amazing. And I think that it benefits any writer to go and have someone take a look at the work and say, okay, this is a problem here. And I think I can understand, part of me does understand, if someone's suggesting radical changes to your work, a lot of you rebels against it instinctively. And I understand that, believe me, because you've put time and care and work into making it just so. I understand that. but it does also a huge service to you and to the work. If you look at what they're saying and you think, okay, why am I, okay, this person's has this, is feeling this way, or they are having a problem with it. Why they have a problem with it? What are they saying? What can I take from here? And you can discard the rest. My editor, she's given me suggestions and told me things that I have blatantly and cheerfully ignored. I'm not so much ignored, but I think what I did was I really, like, for example, she wanted me to cut something, or she suggested I cut something that I absolutely did not want to cut. And so because my reaction to that was so strong, it reaffirmed for me, okay, this is important. I don't want to cut this because this is working. This is important to me. I put time and effort and care, and I want the reader's reaction. I want this to be part of the story. So I left it alone. But in her saying to me, yeah, I think this can go, and my gut reaction, it showed me something new and interesting, even if I didn't agree with her, and that's fine. But you do need that wall that to bounce off someone off. You need that feedback. You can't just be doing it by yourself. And I think that if any writer is going to go and say, "Oh yeah, I don't need an editor. I'll just go out like that," they're either egotistical or they're lying.
Right.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, I don't know any good writers who are like that. So.
No. I understand, and the more I'm talking to writers, and it doesn't apply to every indie author for sure, but like I said on Threads, that seems to be all they do. Whereas I've talked to some others whose work I've really enjoyed, and it makes me wonder why they aren't published. And I guess gatekeeping in the publishing world is not necessarily working as best as it could, or there's just too many.
Yeah, there are. Look, the fact is that there just are too many books out there that are being written, and and you cannot possibly include them all. I mean, even for me, the podcasts that I was playing the stories on, we played one story a week. Sometimes we played multiple, but that was usually one was very short. But that was usually 52 stories a year. We got sent how many stories? I don't even know how many stories we got sent. I don't know. When we opened for submission, we would get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Right? It's literally impossible to accept them all. And honestly, thank God that we didn't accept them all, because there were some stinkers in there. I get to it now. Like, this isn't just, from it's different from an editor who's working for a publisher, where the books that they get are only the books that have gone through an agent and been edited by an agent and then vetoed and then carefully selected, okay, which publisher do we want to send this to? This one from any point around the world could send me the half-assed scribblings and thought, we'll just send this along, or we'll just send this basically porn, or fetishy work along. And they did, believe me, they did. We had a hard podcast, a sister website, and I had access to those submissions as well. And by God, there's stuff that will make your eyes bleed. Yeah. I
mean, something I'm just throwing this out there, but possibly is reflective of other parts of the world. There's been a bit of a controversy within the community here in Spain, where apparently 49% of books published sell 0 copies in bookstores.
Really?
Because they're publishing so much that these books get to the bookstore, but they sit on the shelf. You cannot display them on the what do you call it? Through the windows. They're just sitting on the shelves. They're getting thousands of new titles every month. It is impossible for people to keep pace with that amount of reading. The classics are the classics for a reason. So new books, what chance have they got to succeed?
Yeah, and those are just the books that got published.
And these are published books. So possibly indie authors are getting a better deal by selling to their mates than they are by selling through traditional means. And I understand that bookstores are businesses. They have to make money. So what are they going to sell? What are they going to promote? It's not necessarily the best quality, but I'm assuming that you got similar issues in other countries, in Australia, across Europe, in the US for sure.
Well, first I'll ask: are the books that are not selling like? And do you mean, first of all, do you mean 0 copies? Like, is it literally 0?
Yeah. Apparently, the National Association of Bookstore Keepers met on the big town north of where I live. It's like a 40-mile drive, and apparently those are the numbers that came out. Literally, 49% of published books sell 0 copies in
Okay, yeah.
bookstores.
I think I've seen this before. This thing before, but this is where the data gets skewed, because like there was one online. It was not just in Spain, like 49%. It was like one online as well. Like out of 100 something thousand books that were published in a year, they said 90 something percent of it didn't only sold 0 or sold less than a certain number. Those include textbooks, academic works, reprints of older works, children's books, very, very specific books as well. So that this is not major new titles that the big 5 publisher is pushing out in the English language, especially, and going and saying, hey, go and read the new name by this debut author, and it sells absolutely 0 copies. That's and 95% of authors are in that category. That's absolutely rubbish. That was circulated by a very specific group of people on places like Threads and Blue Sky, who had a very specific agenda to show that, trad publishing is dead and that your book will not sell, and you burn it all down because it's never going to be a thing. It's absolutely, completely untrue. There are huge other factors that come into play. Like, as I said, academic works, reprints, older works, like travel books, or books that are, you're selling to, I don't know, Bulgarian language tourist books, right? Yeah. Things that they cost them nothing to print, and they just put them out there. Those are still counted among, the new book by Stephen King or John Grisham or whatever, right? So it's not nowhere near true.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know about Spain, but I do absolutely know that on the international scale, when they had the data about that's what came through.
But what about, because when I was talking to J.D. Barker a couple of weeks ago, he was, I suppose it's slightly easier for him to be categorical about making statements where his first book auctioned for 7 figures, but he said that if whatever advance money you're going to get is reflective of the money that the publisher is going to put on promoting and publicizing your book, and if it's just not life-changing, then don't take it. You might as well go indie. What's your take on that?
Well, so I am not familiar with J.D. Barker personally. What genre does he write?
Thrillers.
Okay, thrillers do extremely well in the indie space. Extremely well. A lot better than a lot of other genres to start with. He is, but
he's trad published. He's co-written with James Patterson.
I know he is. But yeah, look, he is certainly right when he says that, the amount of money that a publisher throws at you will probably be reflective of how much they want to promote you, because they want to make the money back. They want to make that return on investment. And so, if they throw $100K at you for a trilogy per book, they are going to want to make that money, get a return on that. And that's absolutely fair. I mean, who wouldn't? And so they will push and push to make sure that it goes to bookstores, that it's at the front list. They'll conspire, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but they will just conspire with, people like Goldsboro and Fairy Luge and all those, subscription boxes, and people like that, to really make the book appear on the Sunday Times bestseller list or on the New York Times bestseller list, and things like that, because they really want to give it that attention. They want to give it that boost, and that's understandable. This absolutely, though, does not mean that the book can or won't succeed if you're not getting a huge advance. There are books all the time where the publisher just doesn't know that it's happened because it just became big. I'm pretty good friends with Adrian Tchaikovsky, and he's gone on record saying that he initially wrote, he was a fantasy writer, and he wanted to then write a little book called Children of Time about spiders from outer space, and the publisher's like, oh yeah, but you're a fantasy writer, you don't really write sci-fi. He's like, actually though, I did. It's right here. I have it. And they were like, okay, you can publish, you can do the one sci-fi book, then it's back to the space, back to fantasy for you. It was a low advance, low print run. No one expected to do anything. And a year later, it took off. It won the Arthur C. Clarke Award. It won a slew of awards, and it sold to, I think, Lionsgate for $1 million, for £1 million advance in movie rights, and it's his best performing work. And now the publisher is like, oh, well, we always knew that would happen, and now you're a sci-fi writer, so write sci-fi for us. Yeah, sure, guys.
Yeah.
But you cannot predict that. You don't know what will and won't take off. So yeah, I mean, obviously, if you can make more money going indie than you can with trad, that's fantastic. But a lot of the time, you need to be trad first in order to have that audience, because they have that tick of approval. If it's fair or not is besides the point. To show, yes, you were traditionally published. You didn't just throw it out there and, you know, ask your friends to review it. You actually got it through an agent, you got it through a publisher, you got it through a publishing committee. They published it, it did well, it sold, you know, among the best of the best. And now if you want to go indie, well, it's not about the quality of the work, because you can write a damn good book. Because I'm saying this as someone who is a hybrid author as well. I've self-published a short story collection. I've self-published a novella. And I would not have gotten the sales that I have. And not a huge amount of sales, but still pretty good. Like I paid for a ticket to Japan, plane ticket, return ticket to Japan. You know, I would not have had that if I was just independently published by myself. No one would have cared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think the point you make is obvious, isn't it? That even publishers don't know what's going to hit, isn't it? Famously, J.K. Rowling got 12 rejections, Brandon Sanderson got 30 plus rejections, and then look at where they are now. So it's no one knows. But anyway, sort of pivoting a little bit. What set you off on writing out in space? Because I've got a question I've been trying to figure out. Is what you write, or is what Christopher Roque writes, or even Herbert Dune, is that really sci-fi?
Yeah, I see the angle that you're coming with. Look, I think science fiction can be whatever it wants to be as long as it is set in space. I think that a lot of books do blend genres. The first book is very much, you know, a murder mystery, but combined with a, you know, science fiction background, a science fiction setting. The second and third books, especially the third book, is a big intergalactic war with dozens of species and factions and people and Gothic cathedral spaceships coming into play. And there are elements in it that is very much fantasy. So, you know, because basically, I don't think I've really talked about what the book itself is about, but in order to answer your question, I think I might have to. Basically, it's about the DNA of an extinct alien race that gets used as a drug that makes people get high on aggression and violence. So the main character goes to war to fight this evil big galactic empire, comes back from the war, is traumatized by the experience, but he got through it because of his brothers that he bonded with in the war. Then he gets told that his squad mates are all being killed, and that his estranged younger brother is the prime suspect. And so he has to investigate, but he's going to have to betray one or the other. He's going to have to decide, okay, do I side with the flesh and blood family that is estranged from me, doesn't want anything to do with me now, because I abandoned him to go to war to escape my abusive father? Or do I side with the people who are not my flesh and blood family, but they got me through hell and they're the reason I'm alive today? He has to betray one or the other. And so, but the closer he gets to the truth, the more addicted to this drug he becomes. And as the books go on, they develop in very wacky alien ways. Like the title of the second book, Blind Space, it refers to without spoiling too much, a very freaky alien hive mind, another plane of existence, basically. And you get to see that in some form. And in book 3, you get to see that even more. These other aliens, and they manifest in different ways, and there's this stuff that is unexplained by science, and it's very clearly alien technology. And I just brushed it all aside as, yeah, it's alien, it's an alien life form, it's alien technology, it's an alien hive mind, it doesn't have to be rules. In that sense, I think that the best kind of science fiction is space opera, to be completely honest. I think this, I think a lot of people, when they think science fiction, they think boring, dry, physics explained badly.
Asimov.
And yeah, Asimov. Let's not beat around the bush. I mean, and sure, they have their place, and there are people who love reading them, and that's fine. But I have no interest whatsoever in writing stories that are, that are similarities with Heinlein or Clarke or Asimov or anything like that. I am much more interested in the wacky, the weird, the fun, the character-driven, the exciting stuff that is about people and having adventures that just happen to be set in space with aliens of varying who have various personalities, like Mass Effect. Mass Effect is one of my favorite video game series of all time, and so that's the sort of vein that I'm trying to tap into. And so, although I think Christopher Mercutio, his stuff is a lot more epic than mine is. His stuff is very, very widestream to a degree that my Common series is not to the same degree. But especially with the third book, there is definitely a bit of a lot of influence from Sonny there in there. And his works, I would say, combine the best of fantasy and science fiction. They just happen to be set in. It's his works is essentially a fantasy story just set in space.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
think books, especially the second and third one, are very much fantasy stories, but set in space.
Yeah, because sci-fi is not a genre that I really ever got involved with. But growing up, to me, sci-fi was Asimov. It needed to have that degree of plausibility that in some future, whatever was being described was physically or technologically possible. Whereas things like we said, Dune and all that stuff is more fantasy. But for you, what advantages or what does a space opera setting allow you to do that you wouldn't be able to do in a more traditional fantasy medieval setting?
I think that whether again, not all fantasy books are obviously medieval, and they shouldn't be, because I think that not everyone is writing Tolkien, and I think there's a whole other range of subgenres and fantasy authors who are doing really cool, funky things in that space. But I think that for me, it allows me to have a scope that you usually can't have in fantasy, because a lot of fantasy, it's just one landform, one landmass. Right, the sun, all the characters are under the same sun, same moon, same stars. With space opera, I get to change this. I get to change those. I can set every single scene on a different planet if I want to. Different setting, different physics, different atmosphere, different culture, everything. This isn't to say that you can't, have different diversity of geography and environment in fantasy. Of course you can. But science fiction really allows you to have that scope and that richness, and you can have a world that has 500 billion people in it if you want to, or it can have you can have 5 billion habitable planets, or you can have these big empires that literally stretch for light years and light years and have an infinite amount of places and locations that you can go in. So the world feels that much larger, and in some ways, it's a perfect canvas for epic storytelling. The galaxy, because it's essentially without limit. There are other galaxies as well, and so you can expand the story in a way that you possibly can't in traditional medieval fantasy. And you also get the use of technology. You get, if you can see the world can evolve as well, because if your medieval fantasy setting, if it goes on for too long, for too many years, the technology will inevitably evolve and increase, and have the industrial age and everything like that. And eventually they'll start building rockets and spaceships, and eventually it won't even be fantasy anymore, right? But with sci-fi, you can have something set 20,000 years in the future, and I've written short stories that I like it. They're set 20,000 years in the future or more, but they've also then regressed to a more medieval society, like you see in Dune. So there's, you get space feudalism. That can be set 20,000 years. It can be set 100,000 years. What will the technology look like then? It can just keep evolving. We don't know. But you have that flexibility, whereas I think fantasy is a little bit more restrictive in that sense, that traditional, medieval fantasy at least, the level of technology that can be on display.
But surely, the bigger, the wider your world setting, the more complications you've got there to keep track of everything, right?
Yeah, in
You
some
have,
ways,
you have to deal with the fact that space travel takes an awful long time, and then you need to start freezing your main characters and managing that sort of thing. So how do you deal with that in your series?
I don't. There's warp space. It's light speed. I don't.
Ah.
I refuse. I stubbornly refuse to allow like the realism of space travel, like how long it would actually take to interrupt my storytelling. No, absolutely not. I want to tell these stories. I want to have the characters visit really cool parts of the galaxy and these cool locations that are far flung from civilization, and I want them to do that without being 500 years old by the time they arrive. No, I'm not. You know, I know I'm not doing that. And I know that it annoyed people because like some people were reading and they're like, oh, he doesn't go into like the faster than light travel at all. You know, there's only like one sentence about it, and I'm like, you're lucky there was that much. Yeah, I don't allow physics to constrain the storytelling and the characters in that sense. No, I'm not interested in doing that.
Interesting. So you're not bothering with keeping, yeah, because like I said, it must be a lot more complicated that if you allowed for, having to, freeze your main characters while they travel for however many years. By the time they get there, the people they wanted to see would probably be dead, or it just, to me, it just gets way too complicated.
I mean, but they do it in Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my take. Let's just do what Star Wars does.
And
yeah.
How much of an influence do you think Star Wars could be, like, for you, who I usually say you're insultingly young still? So is probably Star Wars a bigger influence than more traditional sci-fi books like Dune?
100%. I never read, when I was growing up, I never read traditional sci-fi. I've never read Clark. I mean, I've read like a few short stories or a few pages, but I never grew up reading Asimov, Clark, Heinlein. I never was really into that. I was, a lot of the time I was just reading fantasy a lot of the time, but then I saw the covers of Ian and Banks books and I was like, that looks really cool. I really like that. And then I got into the Halo novels, as I said earlier. And it was things like that. But yeah, Star Wars was a huge influence. My mum introduced me to them because she was a massive Star Wars nerd growing up, and she still is. Tracked down Mark Hamill when she was 17, posing as a journalist. So she wasn't posing as a journalist. She was one for the school paper, so she could interview stuff. And so she introduced me to all of them, and she introduced me to Blade Runner, things like that. And so yeah, I've always grown up watching Star Wars. I grew up on the prequels. Say what you like about them, they're better than the sequels are.
Absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things that are better than anything J.J. Abrams has touched. Let's not go there. It's dangerous. But so yeah, Star Wars had a massive influence on me, and the look of it, the aesthetic. I think the lived-in world really had an impact on me. That, it's not like Star Trek where the characters, everything's so pristine and isolated, and it feels like the characters are just walking in sent from stage left into a set. This is a place that's lived in. There's grit under the nails. There's stains on the walls. There's there's scars on the in the landing field from all the ships that have come in and out. And that aesthetic is something that I've really, really taken on board. Like, it's like almost like the Wild West, as it were, but with a sci-fi skin on it.
Yeah. Sorry, I just can't help it. But how about the sequels? I never bothered with the third one. Like, I watched the first two, and the first one was like a retell again of A New Hope. It's like, oh, I've seen this movie twice already. Second one, I was shocked with what they did, and I never bothered with the third one.
You have missed nothing.
Which even the completest in me is like, it's okay with it. So
yeah.
Anyway, And again, going back to your age, surely you must have, I don't know, you must have grown up with a slightly more advanced computer games than I
Yeah.
did. Did you get any inspiration, any sources from those?
Oh yeah, as I said, like Halo,
Oh,
Halo immensely, Mass Effect, Deus Ex, Bioshock, even to some extent Skyrim, Fallout, games like that, The Witcher. I've there's a whole slew of influences I've had from video games for sure. And so yeah, I definitely say that they've worked their way into my books, especially in the action sequences. Um, but yeah, I always find it amusing when I get people saying that to me, like that the book is clearly ripping off Halo because the main character has a mirrored visor, and I'm like, okay, well, as opposed to no visor at all, that
mm.
really makes sense now, would it? But yeah, I would. Video games have always been part of my experience, and that's how I consumed a lot of my science fiction. I mean, I learned a lot of about terms of about spaceships and all these like other like physics terms from Dead Space as well. So the video game series. So that's always my introduction to a lot of like I would say more close to home science fiction.
For a minute there, you were talking ancient Greek to me because all that age of computer games just passed me by. Oh dear.
How old are you, Jose?
I'm in football terms. I'm on the second half.
Right. Okay, that's a good way to talk.
So that's the way I say it. So yeah, just getting there. Um, right, and another thing. So obviously you're now doing. So you got your next book coming out when?
The end of this month, Wolfskin comes out the end
Right.
of this month.
Is it part of your the Common series then?
Yeah, yeah. It's the last book in the Common Saga.
Right. And so how important now is it, because if you got a publisher and everything, how important is it to do the whole social media, the whole marketing for you? Do you have a social media presence that you actively work on or not? Has that become a bit of a requirement from your publishers, agents, all that sort of thing?
Oh, they don't say it, but it absolutely is a requirement because I
Right.
think trad or indie, no one is going to care about your work as much as you do. You
Hmm.
have to put in the work to talk about your work, your books, and your art the way that makes sense to you, not the way that the marketing machine thinks that they should thinks it should be. And to be completely honest, I would be yeah, I think unless you have a dedicated marketing team whose actual job it is to go out there and talk about your work to anyone that will listen, if you have that, great, you don't need to do that work. But the people that can afford to do that I think is probably George R. R. Martin and Stephen King and J.K. Rowling. The
Mm.
rest of us ain't so lucky. So we have to go out there and do it ourselves and put our work name out there and really, do it. Do you have to be on, do you have to be making TikTok videos every 5 minutes? God, I hope not, because I don't think that me cavorting around on someone's phone in front of a camera is going to sell my book. But yeah, it does. I think that being on social media certainly helps. Although I think that talking about your book on TikTok doesn't sell books. Having other people talk about your book on TikTok sells books, and that's the important distinction. Social media is important. I don't think it's so important that you need to be constantly doing being in front of a camera over writing. I will never go and make a video when I could be writing instead. Never. That's not the way I do things.
Right.
But putting yourself out there, appearing on podcasts, doing blog posts, doing guest appearances, going to conventions, all of that is still important to move the needle along. I think it would be you'd be shooting yourself in the foot if you just said, "Yep, I wrote the book. My job work's done. I'm just going to kick back and wait for the copies to sell themselves," because that's never going to happen. I
Mm.
really wish that it did. That the publishers would actually, do the job of selling the book that they paid for. But more and more, the more and more I have experience in this industry, and the more and more I talk to other writers, even writers who you assume are doing extremely well, and some of them are, some of them still have the same frustrations or have seen the same frustrations appear time and time again. And so no one is actually going to be there constantly doing that work for you. You do have to put in the work yourself.
Yeah, you're right, because I think Joe Hill is fairly successful. And when I used to live in London, I bumped into him a couple of times, doing book signings around London, conventions. He still gets around quite a bit. And you would have thought that someone like him, sort of fairly established by now. And I think, the landscape has changed, maybe even over the last 10 years, which is not that long a period of time.
Yeah. I read a blog post just recently by Veronica Roth, who wrote the Divergent books. Mm-hmm. She's sold 40 million copies of her books, but the last book she published didn't do so well, which is crazy to me to think about it when she's literally got trilogy of movies out based on her work, with A-list actors and stars attached to it, and yet her books still don't sell themselves. And I've seen her at conventions and going to these events and doing signings and stuff, because you can slip through the cracks if you're not in people's consciousness, as it were. And the best way to do that is to publish a book, have something new out, and have something, and you get it with each book that you release, you get another wave of people checking your work out and saying, oh, this guy's got a new book out. I wonder what else he's published. Has he published something new? And then they go to your back catalog. But you really do need to be having work out there and showing your face around and publishing to make that work.
This is a conversation I've got pending, but something that is going through what I've been thinking a little bit about. So you've sort of, when I say you, I don't mean you necessarily, but an author, you sort of make it. You get your book traditionally published, it's out there, but you're still at risk that in a few years down the road, if your books don't sell, if the publisher doesn't get their money back, you may be out of, the publishing world and back to the day job.
I mean, look, I know what you're saying. Look, this is the thing about publishing, is that you never have a safety net. You're never in the clear. No matter who you are, you always are at risk of publisher, saying, okay, we either we don't like the numbers, or the numbers are fine, but we don't want to work with you anymore, or the cover, we don't like the cover, or something going wrong, and your book not selling, or that there being a change in management, or something, for who God knows what reasons. There's someone from some other publisher just struts in and says, right, we're going to completely reshape the company, and we're not going to be taking on this genre of books anymore. And there are one or two publishers. There is one publisher, UK publisher, that has told my agent, we do not want to see any space-based fiction in any form whatsoever. Any form. We only want to see stuff that crosses over to the mainstream, like The Martian. And my agent says to them, well, The Martian didn't cross over at first. It was published as a science fiction novel. It was self-published. Then it became, when it started becoming popular, then it crossed over to the mainstream. But they don't listen, because God knows whatever reason. But yeah, you are never in the clear. And that is why a lot of writers sometimes are so desperately trying to do the necessary work, because you're never really in the clear. Like, I was talking about this with Garth Nix a little while back, and he's sold, he's probably, I think, the best-selling Australian fantasy author that's writing today. And he was selling to me that is no guarantee. And he's like, you're just as good as your last book. And after that, if he doesn't do well, they take you around back and shoot you in the head. Is basically, and yeah, he said, and I said to him, surely your prior sales would be a mitigating factor. And he said, they sure help, but there's always that gap, that there's never a guarantee. I'm writing another book now after Wolfskin is done. I've got no idea whether that will sell. I think it will sell. I am hopeful it will sell, and I've had good feedback from people I've sent it to so far, including my agent, but you don't know. You have no guarantee. And once it sells to a publisher, you don't know how well it will do. And that's the hard and terrible thing about publishing. It could take off. It could be the most popular book I've ever written, or it could flop. Again, I have no guarantees. You have obviously some if you have some success and some metrics of as some marketing engine, you have some weapons on your side, but you never have complete armor. You never utterly, you always have some gap there. You're never completely invulnerable.
And so, do you think there are any kind of strategies or any sort of things that you could do to help avoid that? Like, Roku was writing or self-publishing novellas set within the world to keep things going, or other short stories to keep feeding that. But then we've talked about, if you write in a different genre, Jeremy, you are the space opera guy. You cannot write, insert other genre here.
Yeah.
Romantasy, whatever it is.
Oh no, I can't. Oh no, damn it.
So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, a little while back I got told that publishers don't really like it if you change genres, and also the genre that you're writing in space opera is not doing so well, and publishers aren't really going for it, and it would be much harder. And I was like, okay, so where does that put me? I literally don't know where I'm sitting here. And it affected me for quite a while. I was frustrated for the better part of 2025 about it. Immensely frustrated, to the point where I almost didn't want to continue being in publishing. But I found my way out of that, thank God. And I've decided, and I've lost the ability to really care, I think. And I'm not trying to be, all edgy and cynical. What I am saying is that it is not my concern what the sales, the corporate people, the short-sighted corporate people on the sales team, what they think will sell in that moment, because what sells can change very easily. The publishing industry changes every 2 years. The romantasy bubble could pop very, very soon. And I think it will pop. I think it will shrink. I don't think it'll pop. But there is a very good chance, every good chance that, the next thing that I write could, take off, or maybe it won't. I don't know. But it is, again, it's not my concern. And it's certainly not my job to go there and say, okay, this is what the publishing thinks will sell. Right. Okay, I'm not going to go now and write to the trend and publish it. Absolutely not. Even if I physically could, which I don't even think I could do it, because I have to write what I want to write. The trend would be gone by the time it came out. And so then I'd go back to them and say, hey, I've written this thing that you said you wanted me to write. It's really been, it stopped being a fad about a few months ago, and we're not looking for that, and also no other publisher is, and so sorry, you kind of wasted 2 years of your life. That's not happening. Absolutely not. I'm going to be writing what I want to write, and publish it be damned. And honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to say that in a very edgy stuff you way. I'm just trying to say that my creative vision is probably the most important part of the storytelling process, and it would be a little bit ridiculous to then go and try to compromise that for the purpose of appealing to a trend or a hashtag, right? The equivalent of a trend or a hashtag, and that's what some of this stuff is. And the best book that I could, and the book will only be good if I have fun writing it, and if it's my vision, right? That turns out to be the best book, and that's beneficial for everyone. So,
no, I totally respect that. So one final question before we wrap things up: what if you got offered to write within a defined, already set world, something like within the Aliens franchise, or back to the Halo thing? What if they say, Jeremy, here's X amount of money to write 3 novellas or 3 novels set in the Halo universe or Aliens or whatever? Would you be interested in that if it was a world that tickled your fancy?
Absolutely. I've been asked to write for Warhammer.
Right.
I'm not a huge Warhammer. It was years and years ago. I'm not a huge Warhammer fan, and I found the editorial process to be difficult, let's just say. And so I'm not doing it anymore. But yeah, I mean, if someone came to me and said, "Hey, write a Halo novel, write a novella in the Halo universe," absolutely, I would jump at the chance to do that. Like, God forbid, like, if I got the chance to do a Star Wars novel or something like that, absolutely, I would do it. I think it would be a lot more. Sorry, you go.
No. Go on, carry on. Sorry.
I would say there would be a lot. Creative constraints would be a factor, but I would understand that because it's an established world. It's not my world, and there's a big company like got Disney behind it in the case of Star Wars. So, and they have to appeal to a certain certain faction of people, and they have to make sure that your work doesn't include certain things. So it kind of, people have read my work have noted that it is not lacking in the blood department, and that very terrible things happen to good people often and on the page, and with characters die in very brutal ways. I may have to censor some of that for if I was writing a Star Wars novel, for example. But I think I'd be fine. I would be fine with it to a degree. I mean, it would obviously depend on the extent of what I'm supposed to be doing. But if it was someone else's work, I would essentially be a guest in someone else's home, and so I'll conduct myself as such, and I would do what I can to find a path that suits us both.
I like that analogy. Analogy. Not a lot of people do. Did you read the Timothy Zahn Star Wars novels?
Thrawn, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, because I think at one point there was hope that they would adapt those for movies instead of the stuff we've been served over the last.
I wish they did that. It would have been so much better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's becoming a bit of a thing. Just to finish things off, some 10 quick fire answer questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So don't think about them too much, and see how it goes.
Come on, come at me. Hit me.
I'm not sure about this myself, so sometimes it gets a bit weird, but here we go. What's the one sci-fi idea you wish you had written first?
Red Rising.
Oh, okay. Number 2, if you could drop one of your characters into any classic sci-fi universe, where would you send them?
Star Wars.
Okay, that was a bit of an easy one, but I'll let you get away with that one. Here we go. What strange rabbit hole of research surprised you the most while writing your books?
I don't know actually. I don't think I'd have one. Oh, I think bodily decomposition in space.
Would you be able to talk for like 5 minutes about it?
I'm not sure I would be able to. I think it was quite a while back.
Right.
But basically, the body does interesting things when in space. Basically, like you can hold your breath, or you cannot hold your breath if there's decompression, like in a spaceship or whatever, and one of the windows gets punctured and vacuum essentially sucks everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Either not hold your breath, or you can hold your breath. You're dead either way. You're screwed either way. Either your lungs explode or you crumple from the inside. Pick your poison.
Fantastic. Crumple from inside. That's a thought. Right. Which writer made you think, right, I want to do that?
Pierce Brown. Mm-hmm. Or even earlier, George R. R. Martin. I think earlier.
No, yeah. Right, number 5. Coffee, tea, or something a bit more interstellar while writing?
Coffee.
Okay.
Coffee. I can't really get on the sauce while it will just be, even my first drafts will look even worse than they do already.
So you write in the morning? Are you a morning person?
Typically, yeah.
Right. Okay. What's the single piece of writing advice you'll give your younger self?
Right from the heart, not the brain.
Which of your characters will survive the longest in a real space station crisis?
The main character, Vakov.
Mm-hmm. What's the one sci-fi trope you'll never get tired of?
Aliens with personality, like aliens and humans coexisting in a space, like in the Martian or whatever.
Coexisting or permanently at war?
No, I mean you can have both. There are plenty of aliens around.
Oh yeah, okay, no, yeah, I get that now. Okay. If Hollywood called tomorrow, who plays your main character?
Ooh, that one's tricky because the main character is half Japanese, half Slavic, so that would be tricky. If I could pick anyone, I'd say Andrew Koji from he was in the TV show Warrior and also the movie Bullet Train with Brad Pitt. Yeah, I would say, although he doesn't have the physique that Bakov does. I think Michael B. Jordan would have the physique, but Michael B. Jordan is not the right not the right race to play him. Although I would though there's another character he would kick ass if he would play. It would be the best thing ever if he played him.
But you never know, because Tarantino couldn't film Inglourious Bastards until he bumped into Christoph Waltz, because he couldn't find anyone that spoke all the languages required for the role of Hans Landa, and the guy that just killed that performance, isn't it? So maybe there's someone out there that no one has discovered that would be your main character.
Who knows?
Yeah.
If you are half Slavic, half Japanese, and you want a Hollywood, you want to role in a movie, and you think you can help make it happen, give me a call.
That's right. And finally, what's the next galaxy you are taking readers to?
That, who says it's a galaxy at all?
Ooh, intriguing. All right, Jeremy, thank you very much for being here. I've really had a great time.
Glad. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be had.
No. And as you can see, it's all very professional here, what I do. But before we go, I know you got a new book coming. So where can people find you, your work, anything you want to promote? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So the books that are in the Common Saga are in order of publication are Stormblood, Blind Space, and Wolfskin. Wolfskin comes out on the 24th of March, 2026, or 26th, I think, in the UK, March 26th in the UK. And so you will complete the series. And I know some of you don't start books until the whole series is complete. Well, now you don't have an excuse because it's complete. It's there. The main character story is done. And so the story is rounded up. I also have a short story collection called Broken Stars because I've published, I think, over the years about 40 short stories. And I've collected about 20 of them, 20 of the good ones, the best ones in this collection. And you can go and get that. I also have a newsletter / book club. And if you go and sign up to it on my website at jeremyszal.com, you can get a free novella that I'll send to you because I love you that much. I'm on social media everywhere at Jeremy Szal, SZA. That's Jeremy and SZAL. Yeah, that's me.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much, Jeremy, and everyone that was watching now or listening later to the podcast version. Take lots of care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Yep. Thank you so much. Bye.